All right, looks like that is working. Does you guys still have a little red dot?
Yep, I see the red dot.
Maybe? Perfect. All right, so thank you everybody for joining us. Today, we have the pleasure of hosting this session with Saskatchewan Health Authority and Michael Hayduke. Hayduke, I did it, see? Michael Hayduke, actually a member of the Powell City Kinsmen and a public health inspector with Saskatchewan Health Authority. So thank you, Michael, for joining us today.
Thanks, Chantel. It's nice to see everyone here tonight. I know it's a gorgeous day weather-wise, and a lot of people are probably out enjoying the weather. So I appreciate the people who have joined the presentation tonight. The presentation tonight is going to be on temporary food service events and the application form that needs to be submitted to your local public health inspector prior to the event. A little bit of my history is I grew up in the Prince Albert area, and then I've been a public health inspector for just under 29 years, with the majority of that time being in the Nipawin office, and I've been in the Rostern office for just under 3 years. So we'll go on to the next slide. So where to start when it comes to the temporary food vendor application form? The goal of the application form is to assist vendors in special events. So these are large events where it could be things like an exhibition, a fair, a weekend event where you're going to be selling food to the public. So the food that is being sold to the public, each of those vendors need to submit an application form to the local public health office for review and approval prior to the event. And then depending on our schedule, we can and most often do inspect the food booths to ensure that they meet food safety regulation requirements so that we have safe food served to the public, and we do not have a foodborne illness outbreak associated with one of the vendors at this event. So the following list of material that I'm going to be discussing tonight outlines a basic process for a vendor of a temporary food event to follow in order to comply with Saskatchewan Health Authority requirements. So those health authority requirements are to meet the food safety regulations and any standards thereunder. Next slide. So what are some of the vendor responsibilities for the application? They should contact their local public health inspector when they're planning the event or they're planning on doing the application. We can then at that point provide you with a copy of the application and any applicable information that we may feel is necessary for you to do. What you want to do is then complete the vendor application in full and submit it to your public health inspector within 14 days of the event. So if it's a larger event, usually what will happen is we have a separate application for the actual event organizer. So that event organizer would then collect all of the food vendor applications and submit them all to us a minimum of 14 days in advance of the event to allow us enough time to review and approve all of the food vendor applications. Next slide. Another responsibility is to ensure that you have your food booth properly set up and ready for operation at least 1 hour prior to the start of the event. That's usually when public health inspectors will be doing our inspections, is prior to the event. What we'll do is we'll come by and we'll make sure that you have your checklist in place and that you have your hand washing sink, your dishwashing sinks, your temperature log sheet, your thermometers, your certified safe food handler is available. We want to make sure that everything is in place so that you have a successful and safe event. Any missing items required for safe food handling may result in delays of the approval process, and you may not be permitted to operate during the event. Unfortunately, we've had some situations in the province where we've come and found out there are vendors that were operating. They didn't have proper hand washing, and they weren't allowed to operate during the event, which is very unfortunate. All food and ingredients must come from an approved source. So that could be your local grocery store, Costco, wholesale club. If you're getting meat from an approved slaughterhouse that's local, that's acceptable as well. Again, that's something as public health inspectors we do is we ensure that all the food that you're going to be serving is from an approved source. The big thing to remember is homemade foods are not permitted unless you have prior approval from your local public health inspector. So no homemade foods. That's a definite no-no, and that cannot be served to the public at an event. One other thing I want to mention in regards to your ingredients and food that you have, if you have any receipts for that food, keep them handy and available in case you're asked by a public health inspector. Because sometimes what we'll see is you'll get large boxes or large packages of food, and then you'll end up splitting it up into smaller packages. And that package may not indicate where that food is from. You have to keep a receipt available so that we're able to make sure that it's from an approved source. Next slide. Depending on the food vendor setup, and that's something that we'll review later on in the presentation, food and beverages may be prepared, cooked, assembled, and served from the booth at the event with prior approval from your public health inspector. If the booth setup doesn't meet certain requirements, such as portable hand washing sinks or cooking equipment, then the food and beverages will have to be made and processed in an approved facility. That could be another licensed public eating establishment or restaurant, or from another SHA approved facility like a community hall, a curling rink kitchen, an arena kitchen that's not in use during the summer. Those are all considered to be approved locations, but we'll need to know that information prior to the event. Next slide. If you are going to be using a licensed restaurant, then you will need to have permission from the operator to use the restaurant for the preparation of your food. We do not allow people to just to go and use a restaurant without approval, so that there's no potential for cross-contamination between their food product and your food product. We want to keep that separate. So you'd basically have to go in and use the restaurant when they're closed, and then store your food properly before the event. So there's some organizing that needs to be done between yourself and the restaurant operator to ensure things are done properly. But if you are the person who owns the restaurant, then all you have to do on the application form is state that you are the operator of the restaurant. Next slide. When it comes to booth layout, so what we'll want to see in the application form is just a site map of what you're actually going to be having in your food booth. Things like, if you can see the little diagram, bottom left-hand corner, there's 3 sinks. That's your dishwashing area. Wash, rinse, sanitizing. So you always want to have a 3-compartment sink available. The larger middle containers, that's your hand washing, your portable hand washing station. Then you'll have like a prep table, you have food storage. Your food storage, you always want to keep up off the ground a minimum of 6 inches, or off the floor 6 inches. Then you'll have things like freezers, refrigerators, hot holding units. Where are those all located? Garbage receptacles, condiments, any dry storage that you may have, all of that should be laid out in the floor plan, so for us to review. And then when we come in, we do our inspection, we look at your the site plan and confirm that you have everything in place. so that there isn't anything missing, so that we can approve you to operate during the event. Next slide. When it comes to safe food handling, it's a requirement that one person at all time when food is being prepared and or served during the event have their safe food handling certificate. So they have to be on site. So it's advisable that the more people you have that are working at the event have their safe food handling certificate, the better. Training can be found on our website at www.sasthealthauthority.ca. This is also the same website where you can find your temporary food vendor application form and any other applicable information when it comes to temporary food vendor applications. All food must be protected from contamination at all times during preparation and storage, processing and display. So that can be done by having it just covered with plastic wrap or a food grade lid. If it's something where it could be a public display, you may end up having to use a sneeze guard in place. But we want to protect the food from contamination at all times. For outdoor events, this is really, really important because of environmental weather conditions, flies, dust, that sort of stuff. You always want to make sure that the food is covered to prevent it from becoming contaminated. All food preparation areas, including the cooking area, must be physically separated from the public to prevent contamination and prevent risk of burns to the public. So you can't have your booth in one area and then your cooking area behind where the public has access to it. It all has to be contained in the food booth area. Next slide. Well, I should mention that if anyone who is present during the presentation, if they have any questions, feel free to ask at any time and I'll answer your questions as we go through the information. When it comes to condiments, anything like ketchup, mustards, relish, they must be dispensed from a squeeze bottle, a pump container, or individual packages. You can't have big jars of containers with a spoon sticking in it. That's unacceptable. Animals, small children, or any other potential source of contamination are not permitted in the food booth. Friends and family that aren't working in the food booth shouldn't be allowed in the food booth. The only people that we want to see in the food booth are the people working. So no extra people, no extra animals are allowed in the food booth during operation. And this is probably one of the biggest things is food handlers must wash their hands prior to handling food and at any time in which they may become contaminated. Gloves and hand sanitizer do not replace hand washing. If you do not have a hand washing sink in your food booth, you will not get approval from public health. That's a guarantee. And that's something we have to stress. Yes?
Sorry, just quick question for clubs that are doing like one-off like barbecues and stuff like that. If we're by a facility that has like a hand washing center, like a washroom or whatever that we can wash our hands inside the building, is that okay? Or do we need a separate hand washing station out where we are preparing, like if we're doing a barbecue outside
You'd
the
have to
door of
have
like a grocery store or something?
yeah, you'd have to have a temporary hand washing station in the food booth.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Because then that prevents people from having to run out of the food booth to go wash their hands, then run all the way back. And it's not really conducive for people to then wash their hands if it's inconvenient for them. So the hand washing station has to be there. And like you said, gloves and hand sanitizer don't replace hand washing. So that's our number one way of preventing foodborne illness in a lot of our food facilities is proper hand washing. So we want to move to the next slide. Yes,
Michael, sorry, I don't know how to raise the hand on here. I'm not used to Teams. With that hand washing station, could it be just like a 5-gallon jug of water with a pump, like a hand pump that we can wash our hands, or does it have to be a sink? Like a
no,
base?
it can be a a 5-gallon like a camping
Like a
one with a
Culligan
spigot.
water jug. Yeah.
Yeah, a camping water container with a spigot on it.
Yeah.
You don't want to have one of those camping containers that have the push buttons. You want to have
Right.
it where you can turn and have free flowing water, so you can wash your hands without having to hold something open for the water.
Okay. Sounds good.
Does
Thank
that
you.
make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Next slide. Hair must be restrained so it does not contaminate food products. This can be achieved by using a baseball hat, hairnet, ponytail, or anything that can confine your hair. So for women with longer hair, you want to have it pulled back and into a tight ponytail, braid, or a bun. Guys with hair, again, they should have it covered. If it's shorter than your eyebrows, then you don't need to have anything. Males and men with facial hair, they have to keep that covered as well. So the guys with the big bushy beards, they have to wear beard net. Food handlers must not work while ill. So if we drink a little bit too much beer the night before and you're not feeling well, maybe that could be your excuse not to come and do your volunteer shift. Just joking. No, the big thing is, yeah, if you are actually ill with a gastrointestinal illness, then yeah, please don't come to work, because what's going to happen is you have the potential for spreading your illness into the food and then into the public. So if you're sick, stay home, please. No smoking or vaping is permitted in food preparation areas and or in the food booths. So that comes under. It should also come also no eating. You don't want to be eating while you're working in the event. I know I've worked in some food booths where everyone snacks on the dry ribs or the deep fried mushrooms and stuff like that. And it's like, if you're hungry, go take your food, step out of the food booth, eat, come back, wash your hands, and then continue working. But don't be snacking as you're working in the food booth. Next slide. So this is the big thing, sink requirements. So our sink requirements is really dependent on what your menu is. So part of the application form will be you submitting what you are going to be having for a menu. If you're only selling prepackaged foods for things like chips, candy, bottled drinks, cupcakes, things that are prepackaged, you actually don't have to have any sinks. Hand sanitizer is recommended for people to have, but no sinks are required. Now, if you're going to be dispensing drinks from the original sealed containers, serving only dry foods, or portioning foods into single-use cups, serving of previously prepared foods in an approved facility, then what you're required to have is a temporary hand washing station and extra serving utensils or a 3-compartment sink available. Next slide. And when it comes to if you're going to be processing foods on site, assembling any previously prepared foods from an approved facility, or final cooking or reheating of foods, then you're required to have a portable hand washing sink with hot and cold running water, and a 3-compartment sink with hot and cold running water in a booth. So a lot of times what we'll see in these situations, these are our booths that are permanent structures, where you would see them at an exhibition or at a fairgrounds. They would have these sinks installed. Now, if this is going to be just a weekend event and so forth, then you're probably going to be looking at more of the temporary hand washing station and the temporary 3-compartment sinks. But again, it all depends on what the menu is. My recommendation with a lot of people is keep your menu simple. The simpler your menu is, the easier it is to run a successful food booth. The more food items you have, the more then you're ending up having to worry about hot holding temperatures, cold holding temperatures, transporting a food from different sites. And it leads to a lot more issues, especially in the summer when we have hot conditions like this. Your refrigeration temperatures have a difficult time keeping up. And so you always want to make sure that your cooler units, your coolers with the ice packs are kept between 0 and 4 degrees Celsius. So keep things simple. Do 1 or 2 items only and do them very well, and you'll be successful compared to having 15 items in a food booth and running into issues. Next slide. Temporary hand washing stations. As we'd mentioned earlier, an example of an acceptable setup would be a 5-gallon camping jug or coffee urn, and it has to be filled with warm water, not cold water. We want it to be as hot as possible because warm water or hot water will help remove any oils or anything, grease that may get onto your hands as you do the hand washing. So warm or hot water, never cold water in your hand washing container. A tap or spigot that allows a hands-free flow of water, push button spouts are not acceptable, as I mentioned earlier. Liquid soap and paper towels in dispensers. Hand washing station must be kept off the ground or on a table or a shelf, as going to be shown in the picture in the next slide. A catch bucket or basin to receive the wastewater. The water must not be allowed to drain directly onto the ground, and the catch basin or bucket must be equal or greater in capacity or volume than the potable water container, so that it doesn't spill out onto the ground. Water shall be disposed of in a toilet or other receptacle connected to a sanitary sewer. Do not dump wastewater into a storm sewer or onto the ground behind the booth. I've seen it happen before, and it causes issues, especially when it comes to flies and other insects. It's an attraction for them. So no dumping of any gray water from your sinks onto the ground. Hand washing stations must be operational before handling of any food occurs in the booth. Be prepared to show your health inspector your hand washing station during the inspection. That's the first thing I go to. When I go do my food booth inspections, I go in and the first thing I do is I wash my hands. That way I check to see the temperature of the water. I check to make sure that it's free flowing. It has liquid soap, paper towels. A garbage can needs to be nearby, so you have disposal of your paper towel into a garbage can. That's the very first thing I do, is I wash my hands. And that then also shows to them that anybody who walks into the food booth, the very first thing they should do is wash their hands. Hand sanitizers and or gloves do not replace hand washing. So if you are going to be using gloves, you do have to wash your hands before you put the gloves on and after you take the gloves off. And if the gloves become contaminated, you have to replace them. You can't just continue wearing dirty gloves. Hand washing station is always required where there is open food, including sampling. If all food is prepackaged, you may not be required a temporary hand washing station. But again, that will be part of the approval process from your local public health inspector. Next slide. And this is your example of a temporary hand washing station. So you have your waste paper basket, your urn or your container with warm water with a free-flowing spigot, your liquid soap in a dispenser, you got your little paper towel in dispenser, and your discard bucket. And then that discard bucket gets dumped into a toilet or into another sink that goes into a sanitary sewage disposal system. Next slide. Now we're going to talk about the pre-opening checklist. So this is a checklist that if you go through and you have available at the time of your inspection, and you have it all checked off, guaranteed you're going to have a very easy time with the health inspector, because everything that is on this checklist is exactly what we're going to be looking for during our inspection. So some of the things that we'll be looking for is an accurate probe thermometer to monitor food temperatures. So that thermometer must be able to read between minus 18 and 110 degrees Celsius. So your freezer temperatures are minus 18 degrees Celsius or colder. So if you have any frozen foods, your thermometer has to be able to read that temperature. And then what you want is an accurate thermometer in each of your cold holding units. You want to be monitoring your temperatures every 2 hours and recording them on a temperature log sheet. So by having them in your cold holding unit, somebody can go around every 2 hours, take the reading, and then document what the temperature is. If it's your refrigeration units, if the required temperature is 0 to 4 degrees Celsius, if your cold holding unit is out of the temperature danger zone, you now have to assess what you have to do with your potentially hazardous foods. If you're near the end of the event, you can maybe move your potentially hazardous foods into a different cooler. But if it's a multi-day event, you may end up having to take that cooler out of use for potentially hazardous foods, and then storing your potentially hazardous foods in a cooler that's working. I've seen that happen before too, especially during our exhibition season and stuff like that. It gets hot. You can get to plus 35 temperatures, and you get these little tiny refrigerators that they stuff full of food that are opening and closing multiple times an hour, and they just can't keep up. So you really have to watch how you handle your foods. And so then it comes down to it, okay, maybe you end up having to get insulated coolers and put ice in those coolers and keep some of your potentially hazardous foods in those coolers. Number of ways of being able to keep your cold food cold, that's required. Another thing is keep your pop and water out of the refrigerator. Your pop and your water are not potentially hazardous. If they're a little bit warm, people will survive. But yeah, you want to keep your potentially hazardous foods in the temperature danger zone, or if they're cooked, you want to keep them in the hot holding zone. Hot holding is anything above 60 degrees Celsius. Again, that's something you should be monitoring every 2 hours with your accurate probe thermometer. You'll also be looking at wanting test strips. They can be either chlorine, quaternary, or iodine. And that's for sanitizing surfaces, your food contact surfaces, and it's also used for sanitizing of dishwashing. So you have to have test strips available to monitor your sanitizer concentrations. For dishwashing, your chlorine minimum concentration is 100 parts per million. For your quats, it's 200 parts per million. That's in your third sink. And for iodine, it's anywhere from 12.5 to 25 parts per million. We don't really see much for iodine sanitizing anymore, so it's usually chlorine and quats. So have your test strips available for monitoring your concentrations. A sanitizer bucket or
Michael,
yes,
sorry, Michael. When you say quats, what is that? Like we're using bleach. What does that fall under? Is that
bleach is chlorine.
okay?
So for bleach, the activated or the compound that actually does the sanitizing is your sodium hypochlorite. So that's your chlorine. Sorry, in my back.
You're frozen on my screen. I don't know. Sometimes it's my internet though.
Yeah. Oh, I can see you guys moving around. I'm not.
Michael, you might have to leave the meeting and come back in. Might unfreeze you.
Yeah. Am I? Can you guys
There,
see
we can hear you
me
now. We
or
just can't see your face. Not anymore, though. Stay tuned for technical difficulties.
How can you guys hear and see me?
That is much better.
Oh, perfect. Sorry about that. I lost my Wi-Fi at the office, so it's back. So we're talking about test strips. So you'll want a sanitizing bucket or labeled spray bottles with your sanitizing solution for sanitizing your food contact surfaces. If you're using a sanitizer bucket, you want your clean wiping cloths to be placed inside the sanitizer bucket. You don't want to have your wiping cloth stored outside of the sanitizing solution while it's in use. And that sanitizing solution, once it becomes dirty, it needs to be replaced quite frequently. So probably every couple hours. Liquid hand soap in a dispenser, paper towels in a dispenser. Again, that's all part of your hand washing station. Next slide, please. Sufficient cold holding equipment to hold all foods requiring refrigeration capable of maintaining temperatures of 4 degrees Celsius or lower. Again, our potentially hazardous foods, you got to keep between 0 and 4 degrees Celsius. And you, depending on what your menu items are, will determine how much cold holding equipment you're going to be required. Well, if it's a small event, maybe a couple insulated coolers with ice packs will be sufficient. But if it's a multi-day event, you may need multiple refrigerators to hold all of your food. You also will be required to have sufficient hot holding equipment capable of maintaining temperatures at or above 60 degrees Celsius. So your hot holding minimum is 60 degrees Celsius, and that should be checked every 2 hours. Enough tables or food preparation surfaces to safely prepare all foods. Hand washing sink, as we mentioned earlier, that is a definite requirement. Your dishwashing station, that's going to be coming up. We'll talk a little bit more about what our sink requirements are. Oh, actually, I did talk about it already. And again, your dishwashing station will be dependent on what the menu is that you're serving. Stop plugs for all dishwashing sinks, if applicable. If you're just using basins, then you don't need the stop plugs, but any of that effluent that you're using has to be disposed of in an approved manner. Again, don't dump out your dishwashing water onto the ground. Dish detergent, if you are doing any dishwashing on site, is also required. Next slide. If you're in a food booth that has hot and cold water under pressure, that water must be potable. Any water that is used in food preparation has to be potable as well. So that, again, bottled water is most likely the best thing to use if you're doing any food prep that requires the use of water. Disposable utensils and dishware for the public. Any extra utensils for serving of cooked foods. So that would be more in the food prep area. Potable water containers. So if you don't have hot and cold water under pressure in your booth, then have potable water containers available. Gray water disposal containers. that would be for your hand washing and also for any dishwashing that you do. That gray water has to be disposed of properly. Garbage bins are present and lined with a bag. And if you do have or received a temporary event license, that needs to be posted where the public can see it. Next slide. Additional comments. So I have been to a couple outdoor events where they do use deep fryers and they're not in an enclosed building like a food booth. You need to have written approval from the local authority having jurisdiction. And that would be like your fire inspector or your fire chief. We don't approve them, but if you can get written approval by the local jurisdiction, then we'll allow them to be. But again, they should be used in a manner where they're not going to cause burns to the public and that they're covered so that you don't get any debris, wind, dust, insects falling into the grease. And the biggest thing with outdoor deep fryers is rain. You got to protect it from any rain because rain in hot grease is going to cause a major issue and potential burns of anybody who's around it. So you got to protect that outdoor deep fryer from environmental contamination, including rain. Open flame chafing dishes are not recommended at outdoor events. This is due to the blowing out of the flames and inability to maintain temperatures above 60 degrees Celsius. So in situations like that, I know in my area, if it's an outdoor event, these open flame chafing dishes aren't allowed. I won't allow them in a food booth. I had one food vendor come to one of my events with those open flame chafing dishes, and his hot holding temperatures were in the mid 30s. And they were in the mid 30s for over 2 hours. And so all of that food had to be discarded. I wouldn't allow him to sell that food to the public. So he was from a licensed restaurant an hour away from the event site. And so he cooked all the food at his restaurant, transported it in insulated coolers to keep it hot. But by the time he got everything set up, his hot holding temperatures were in the mid 30s, definitely well below the 60 degree Celsius requirement he had. He had no way of getting that temperature up above 60 degrees Celsius. So therefore, I made the call that all food had to be disposed of. And he cooperated and discarded it into the garbage can. Next slide. So when it comes to your local public health inspectors, depending on what city you're close by, this is the information for your public health inspection offices. Again, this information can also be found on the Saskatchewan Health Authority website. Next slide. And that's my presentation. Do we have any questions? There's a lot of information. A lot of this information too is also provided when you go with the temporary food vendor application. So as you're filling out the application, if you're having any questions, definitely contact your public health inspector. That's what we're here for. We're here to work with you to make sure that the application is completed properly, that you have everything in place so that you have an approval of the booth and that you're able to safely serve food to the public during the event. And that's the main goal, is to have a safe event where we don't have a foodborne illness outbreak occurring.
Michael, I'm just pulling up the Sask Health Authority website here. Would you be able to walk us through where to find the forms for
Okay.
applying for temporary licenses? Should be easier for you to figure that out than me, I am assuming.
Yeah. Yeah, if you
All
show
right,
me
are we
your,
back up?
yeah, so if you enter, go to search and type in temporary food vendor. There it is. Search results.
It's just right there. And are
Yeah.
these different, or is this just vendor application would be the one to go?
It would be, let's see. Yeah, this is the one. It's 15 pages. So that's our actual, and so everything in my presentation came off of probably the first 7 pages of the document. And then if you go through, well, it'll actually show what the application is. Page 8. You go to page 8, that's the start of your application. There's your menu item. So you list all your menu items, and then you tell us whether it's prepackaged, pre-cooked, or prepared on site. There's that permission of use form that we talked about. Temperature log sheet. Have multiple temperature log sheets. There would be one for each unit that you have. And then your signature and date you completed the application. Then you email it, or most likely email it to your local health inspector.
And that's all listed, those email addresses are on the application here as well? I'm
Yeah,
hoping.
it would be on the SHA website. No, it's not on that. So if you go back
No.
to the site search, just type in public health inspector. No, it should be, there it is. Contact your public health inspector. There's all your information. So my area is the Melfort area. So depending on
Awesome.
whichever region you are in, if you send your application to the email, then it gets, for our region, it'll go to Melfort, and then from Melfort, they will direct it to me for my area. Most other offices do the exact same thing because we have a lot of district offices in the province, and so we have our head offices, and then they'll just forward that information on to the district office where the event is going to be held.
Okay, awesome. Is there any other questions that we have for Michael? Are we able to reach out to you, Michael? Would you be able to share your information? Maybe, I guess I can post it online with the recording as well.
For sure. Yep.
But just to post, your name and your email, just in case there are any specific questions that, as a fellow kin member, you may be a little bit more aware of what we're actually asking sometimes.
Oh, for sure. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, my phone number is 306-232-9645. And my email address is michael.hayduke@sasthealthauthority.ca.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michael.
More than welcome.
No questions here. Thank you very much. It was very informative.
I'm
Yes,
going
thank you very
to
much.
Thank you.